Hello everyone, welcome for this new weekly community show. Welcome to all of you, especially those of you that are new players in our community. May you feel welcome in the game and in the community. And to all of you that are returning player, welcome back. And thank you very much for giving another try to Embers Adrift. Today we will be speaking about the patch notes. I've also said that we had a special guest, and I'm sorry because I lied. We don't have a special guest. However, I will be speaking about very exciting news from the community itself. So we have a lot of things to discuss about, and it's going to be exciting. I will also combine this episode for you watching this on YouTube with the interview of Undone. So instead of having some gameplay at the end of this video, there will be a very exciting interview about Undone, our tech director. You don't want to miss that. It's the first time he joined Embers Adrift community show, so you really want to look that out. If you have been present on Twitch, of course, 2 weeks ago, you have seen that interview already, but there's some information that you may want to re-listen. This week, bring a handful of critical fixes to the server. These include temporarily rolling back riposte damage so NPCs aren't one-shotting you, fixing a rare exception that could cause a zone to crash, and fixing a loot table bug that was causing item to drop at an unexpectedly low rate. This update is server only and requires no client-side patching. Later this week, we are hoping to open up the new QA server to anyone who has an active account. We will continue pushing content to QA through the months, so below for a teaser of what is to come. Alright, so this is pretty important because you guys have been sharing some precious feedback. It has been investigated, and there it is. The problems have been fixed thanks to your feedback. So when you encounter weird sayings and oddities, please continue to share your feedback. You can share your feedback with different manner. First, /report in-game directly. This will also give some extra indication to the devs that receive directly your report on a special channel on Slack. It indicates your geographical location and some stuff like that. So there's some extra data that gives some precious information. There's also a full forum on Discord, which is community feedback or Embers Adrift suggestion. I don't remember now the title, but you will find it on our list of channel. It's a forum, therefore you can open a new thread and you can upvote or downvote every proposition made by every other player. Be sure before to post a new ID to see if someone else has posted that ID before you. And then of course we have a forum, and on our forum we have a feedback section. If you want to share very long and detailed information, that will be the best place to do it. Fixed a rare server-side exception when removing some buff and debuff. Fixed an issue with loot table initialization that was causing drop rate for some item to deviate from their intended rate. See below for more detail. Design, reduce riposte damage. This is a temporary fix until we can properly separate NPCs and player riposte skill soon. So that has been a little event we receive a lot of feedback on, including during the weekly meeting on Discord. By the way, I invite you all to join us on our weekly meeting on Discord if you want to discuss directly with other players, the community and the dev. It's the best moment to do so. You will find all information related to those meetings on Discord in the event section. Upcoming change on QA. So the QA server is nearly operational. If all goes well, we may be able to open this up later this week for a few days. A sampling of the current pending changes currently on QA are making their way to QA this month. So if you recall correctly, we have been discussing about this before. We are planning, or now it's really close to that, so it's not planned, it's almost there, to reopen the QA server for you to test the content. So we will change a little bit our way of sharing the patches. Instead of having a patch every week, sometimes a small patch, sometimes a big patch, sometimes you're not happy, sometimes you're very happy, we will dropping all those patches on the QA server so you guys can help us test them. Therefore, we can experiment more, we can create a solution without being scared to break down everything that is on the live server, or to nerf your character to death, and so everyone will be extremely upset. So we can tinker more our solution, and all of that will be done on the QA server. You test there, you give our feedback. And that will allow us to have a nicely polished and nicely tested big patch once a month. It will be easier to prepare, easier to test, easier to correct, and the patch will be more consistent as well. It will also be easier to promote on social media and on the forum. It will also be a big occasion for everyone to gather and see the exciting new stuff that is happening this month. The QA server will not be open every day all the time, so it will be only for some specific time. So we will be able to organize some event where we invite you to play with the devs, like we were doing during the alpha and the beta. And also this does not steal away our player base from the live server during the rest of the week. So like I was saying, all of those changes will be tested by you and by us on the QA server before to be implemented on the live server. So some bug fix, including group invite fix, environmental prop fix, texture fix, create your audio normalization. This has been a feedback directly from some streamer during the open weekend. Repost update, dueling by death rolls, multiple new quests are on QA, but they will not be available as we don't want anyone spoiling the fun. That's very important. You will never be testing the quest on QA. New level 30 plus abilities. Aren't you excited? New outdoor 30 plus zone, which will utilize new loading tech to reduce the patch size, and an Unity minor engine revision update. Lots of bugs and performance fixes. You know the work in progress section, you have a special thread about this. You are welcome to check it out if you are curious. This is the closest that we have to a roadmap. So if anyone asks you about the roadmap, you can direct them to that thread. Itemization version 2, it's ongoing. We are in the midst of working through all items in the game to rebalancing their stats. The general goal is to allow for items to be more easily distinguishable from one another and feel like upgrades as you progress through them. This also allows for more clear-cut differences between items dropped from 1 to 3 chevron uncommon mobs, imbued, and a rare item. A change of this magnitude will require quite a bit on time on QA, but we feel that it will have an overall positive impact on the game. That will be very important to check out and to have tested, especially if you are someone that has been collecting a lot of items. It will be a good, keep all those items in your chest until it's on the QA server, because your character will be copied from the live server to the QA server, and you will be able to see the change directly on the items you have already gathered. The Grimstone Canyon, that's our new zone. Aren't you excited about this? It's going to be completely different, with a different landscape, different lore, and plenty of really exciting stuff going on. A new level 30 plus zone is currently working its way through the design phase and should be on QA within a week or two. This zone provides the perfect opportunity to test our new loading routine. If successful, we can begin to enable this tech for other scenes to reduce the overall size of future patch. And oh my god, lastly, that's going to be a long read, but too long didn't read. This week I identified and fixed an issue with loot table that was causing some item to drop at drastically lower rate than we intended. Thank you all for continuing to bug us about it. Basically, the community has been speaking about a bug related to drop rates. But that bug was very nebulous and we were not capable of reproducing it internally. Indeed, we have been investigating, or Undone has been investigating for many weeks to try to find the bug, but it didn't felt like there was anything happening at all. On the test server and on every of his experiments, everything worked just fine. So where the players just, have bad luck or something like that, was this feeling of having wrong drop rate was just an idea? So the investigation had been done really thoroughly with the collaboration of players that were reporting consistent drop rate to Undone because they were playing in specific area for 12 hours a day, so they knew exactly what was going on as a drop rate. Thankfully, with this report from the players, Undone managed to understand what was going on. So do not explain in details what the bug is. It was just related to the way the loot table were procedured or initialized, and the fix had been easily found. So thank you very much, guys, for your feedback. If you want to know more details about this, you can read what I just read for you in the patch notes. There it is, but that was it for the patch. Now, I do have some other news to share with you that are more related to the community. First of all, I would like to apologize. Last week I've promised you to share with you some videos about the streamer during the streamer marathon, but unfortunately I did not have the time to work on that. This is something that takes quite a while to create, as you may guess, and I just didn't have the time to do that. So no streamer marathon best of yet, but it's going to come. I promise you I will be doing it. Hopefully we have it next week. In any case, we have a very great and important news in the life of Embers Adrift. I will say it's historical news. Most of you are already aware, but some of you may not know. So let me grab my little image here. We got our first level 50 players. The first one to reach level 50 was Nautilus. We were expecting him. He hit 50 the 2nd of February. And because of that, he received the title, the Elite Drifter, crowning him as the first and unique player to have reached level 50. That happened only once in the life of a game. It's a world first. So Nautilus, congratulations to you, officially from the community show. As Nautilus was also the first warlord to reach level 50, he got the title High Warlord, that every class that reached level 50 for the first time will obtain. Very closely, his buddies Quetzal and Gordak reached level 50 as well a few days later, the 5th of February. And so Quetzal is now High Knight and Gordak is High Berserker. So I am wondering who shall become the High Warden and the High Brigand and all of that. It will be exciting to follow the next player that are going to achieve this. Why is it important to celebrate our first level 50? In Embers Adrift and in Summerhaven, we do not want to push player to reach max level as fast as possible. This is kinda contrary to the goal of the game, which is a long progressive journey that you share with your friends, and you take your time, you slow down, and you smell the flower while you picking them and whatnot. But we also have a small community, and it's very important, I do things to celebrate any achievement. Nautilus have been explaining why it was important for him to be the first. He wanted to have this achievement. He wanted to be ahead of everyone else because it gives you a feeling of being the pioneer of a new game. And this is not an experience you can have very often in games like World of Warcraft or Elder Scrolls Online or Final Fantasy XIV. There's so many players that it's really difficult to be the first. So here it was an occasion, and with a game like Embers Adrift, which is about exploration, which is about having a long journey, this is an absolute unique experience to have, and one he wanted to have. And so here it is, Nautilus, Quetzal and Gordak reach max level together and had the chance to be the pioneer of our community. Now let me read their comments. Embers was an incredibly unique and entertaining journey that fulfilled the classic MMO itch, said Nautilus. The community has many friendly and like-minded individuals, which really enhanced the experience. The solo, small group 2-3 or large group 4-6 format allowed us to wave in and out of different sized groups along the way while enjoying the game in many different ways. Exploration was one of my favorite aspects of the game. Identifying new points of interest, named mobs, or experience location kept me pushing for the next zone over and over again. Pushing to the forefront of the level range allowed me to keep our exploration unspoiled, which was a major factor of my playstyle and mentality. Playing a new classic MMO and learning the zones ourselves was one of the most fun things I have done in a very long time in my gaming history. I look forward to continuing playing Embers and exploring the new zone, quest and lore as they are introduced in the future. I had a great time leveling to 50 at Quetzal. One of the main strengths of the game, and where it really shines, is group play. So I made it a point all along the way to try and find people to adventure with. This has probably been the most challenging game to level to the cap out of any games I have ever played, but also the most rewarding. Being first and ahead of everyone is unique because there is no wiki, no one to ask or tell you how to do something or what is there. You get to explore and learn everything. I can't wait for all the new adventures as Embers Adrift continue to grow and grow. So this is an extract of a blog post that I will publish on the forum. It's not published yet, but for you watching this video on YouTube, you will find the link towards that post in the comments below, in the information box below. So that was our first couple of level 50, guys. Who do you think will be the next on the line? Hey, Ash Beyond Gaming, hey! Nautilus has spent insane hours. Yes, that's true. It really has shown dedication, commitment, persistence. He has not been discouraged. Well, maybe he has felt discouraged sometimes, I don't know, but in the grand scheme of things, he has not been discouraged. He has continued to go through, and I think that in itself is admirable. He has also always been positive and kind with the rest of the community, so it has not been this kind of one player reaching his goal and ignoring everyone else. So it has not been the case at all. So I think he is part of, and Quetzal the same, part of building up this feeling of family and community with the guys that goes ahead everyone and that explore these things, which is really cool. Yeah, Ash is saying, on top of that, Nautilus is a great guy. He's very helpful and willing to share information with us in his wake. Yeah, exactly. I think we really have a very nice community. I'm very happy about that. Alright, I do have a community member to speak to you about. And today, well, That community member is actually a streamer on Twitch, but it's not through Twitch that I discover him. So it's another medium, and it will be the first medium like that we're going to talk about. And it's nice because today is there. It is Tom Reforge will write a very interesting blog post. You can see, so I'm giving you the link towards his blog post. He's also streaming on Twitch, but I will be very honest, I've not been seeing his stream yet, so we'll have to discover that. So here you can see I have been streaming Embers Adrift. So I'm giving you also, I will also give a shout out to Tom Reforge, so you can follow him, which I will do myself. But what I want to speak about today is the blog post. So I'm not going to read all of it because you need to go on his website to read this blog post. But I will take a little extract like here. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to read this. It brings a sense of adventure, reward, friendship, and more in such a short that you start the game. Why is that? You are lost, constantly lost. It shows you into an unknown land, injured, as you seek for answer and try to make sense of something, anything. You're not alone too, as other players are in the same boat as you, trying to understand what they are supposed to do and where they are supposed to be. Having a chat with others is a must, because none of this content is really made to do alone. It pushes you to talk with others, because if you don't, you just stay stuck where you are. Until you let go of some pride, stubbornness, or shyness, you will continue down the path of no progress. Isn't that a nice writing, a nice little blog post? We have never speak about a blog post, so have a read, check it out, and thank you, Tom, for creating this text about us. It's really nice. It sounds very fancy with my accent. Haha, nice. This is really cool. Okay, perfect. All right, everyone, be ready to welcome Undone, our tech director today, that is going to talk to you about many different things, all tech-wise. So here it is. Your lovely face is on the screen. Hi.
Hello, everyone.
How are you doing?
Doing well.
I'm really, really happy that you're on the show. This is really epic, so that's nice. It's the first time. Oh, look at that. A lot of fun are yelling in the chat.
It's me. Yes, the Warden Legend himself. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right, so today we're going to discuss about different projects that we have, but also your impression about Embers Adrift launch. So maybe we can start with that.
My impressions of launch?
Yes. So
sleep deprivation is how I would describe it. It's very stressful when we move from beta, where things can break and everything's okay, to waking up in the morning and having your wife tell you that the servers are down. It was tough. It was a transition to have that live service going. We had a few missteps along the way, but thankfully Richard was able to work on some tech that had some automatic restarting, so if things happen to the servers, we could handle that kind of stuff, and I could get some sleep.
Nice.
So,
what was the most challenging aspect of the launch?
the most challenging aspect of the launch thus far has certainly been the server memory leak. For those of you who have been following along with the patch notes, our servers have a very slow but persistent memory leak that can cause some problems and has caused the zones to crash a few times. I've spent a lot of time working on fixing that memory leak, but in fixing that memory leak, it causes other problems that are kind of outside of our control at this point. So, band-aid solution of slapping more memory, that gif of the one guy that's just slapping the water onto the thing, slapping some more memory into the server. So everything runs smoother, at least until restart. So far, things have been good. A little nervous about the free weekend, but we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
We will be fine with the free weekend, you think?
Yeah, I think it'll be cool. We'll have to start up a number of probably instances and do some rolling, where we start up an instance and close one, and then people will naturally end up migrating to the other one, and then close down one if the memory gets too big. But we've got a lot more overhead on the server with the recent upgrades, so we may not even have to do that. It's just something I'll have to keep an eye on throughout the weekend.
Oh, that's very nice that you're speaking about the instance, because that's a new tech you have been implementing for launch. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So the instancing tech was actually kind of a last minute thing. We weren't initially planning to do that, but given that we weren't sure how many people were going to hop in and launch, one of our big fears was not having enough monsters to kill in at least the starting zone, right? So the starting zone is designed to be a little bit smaller than many of the other zones and be a little bit more limited, because we wanted to push you through that starting zone and get you into, the city in Northreach, around level 6 to 8, because we want that first zone to kind of act as a tutorial zone. So some of the, I just laying in bed one night thinking about the game, and everything just clicked to me on how I could get instancing working. So it took me about a week or two to work on, but some changes to the login server and how we handled all that stuff. But once it was implemented, it worked pretty well, and I think that's what let us do a relatively smooth launch. Besides the occasional crash, no one really had issues getting into the zones. No one really had issues, that we're aware of that were major game-breaking things. Like most of the feedback was saying this is a very smooth launch, which we were very proud of.
Yeah, that's really cool, and this also allowed to alleviate the memory leak when that happened on this one.
I mean, the instancing tech, allows us to do a smoother transition. I mean, we never want to interrupt players' gameplay, right? But sometimes, at least when we were dealing with the lower memory overhead on our before we did the upgrade, we would have to spin up a new instance and ask people to switch over and say, we're going to shut this instance down in an hour. So, it just kind of interrupted players' gameplay, which we don't like doing. So we try to avoid that at all costs when possible. But in those particular situations, we had to. But yes, you're right. Without that instancing tech, we would literally have to shut down the zone and restart it, and people would get disconnected, which would not be good. So it's benefited us in more ways than one, which is fantastic. And it also allows us to expand the game, in population booms such as free weekends or things like that, without having to shard the servers into multiple things. So then we're not going to run into server merging issues down the road and things like that if the population declines and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, that's really nice, and it allows everyone to play together and be sure they play with their friends. Right. And that's something that's very important to me as well. Is it the instance system? Is it something that we will continue to do when it's needed, or is it going to be developed further?
Right now, the instance system, it's not on a short list for further development, right? There's a lot of things we'd like to do, but right now it's not really. It's not top of the priority list, essentially. It will be used, absolutely. Right now, it's all manual in a sense of like we keep an eye on zone populations, and if it gets too high, we end up spinning up a new zone for people. But we do have plans to have automated tech that would either cycle machines out that could potentially monitor the memory footprint. If it gets too large, then mark it for closed, spin up a new server, and then maybe send a message to the players to migrate at their earliest convenience. There's a lot of interesting things we could do in that front to work around these memory issues we've been having. But right now it's kind of manual. We take a look, we say the server or this zone has X number of people in it. We feel like this zone handles X number of players content-wise smoothly, so players have the best experience in that zone. Okay, let's start up a new scene of that, right? So when we head into the free weekend, we'll probably have a couple New Haven Valleys open, just depending on how frequent or how many people come in.
Yeah, let's hope that we will need a lot of instances of New Heaven for this open weekend. Be sure, everyone, to bring your friends. Someone is asking, is that a self-heating coffee cup? And if it is, where can I get one? Oh, it is.
Yeah, so funny enough, this is what's called the Ember mug. And I got this at Costco, I believe. It's a very expensive luxury item. I think these cost about $100. It's kind of ridiculous. But it keeps my tea at the perfect temperature, and I can let it sit all day on the little charger, and it's always the same temperature. So I don't have to worry about my tea being cold, an hour from now, 2 hours from now. And if I go refill it with, tea that I had made previously that's no longer hot, this will warm the tea to that temperature. So
that's awesome.
I very much enjoy it, even though I recognize it is a ridiculous luxury item.
Oh, but that's fine. It's an Ember cup. I mean,
it does say Ember on it, so that definitely helps.
Yeah. You owe yourself to have that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. I've got an app on my phone that controls the temperature of my tea mug, and I have to carry around a tea mug charger. It's ridiculous, but I absolutely love it.
Now let's speak about the next big project for Embers Adrift, which is the QA server.
Yeah, the QA server. Well, I see a comment here from SHOUTOUT that our subs money is going to, and while funny, no, it's unfortunately not going to my mug. I got this a while ago, but that is funny. The QA server is currently up and running locally. One of the issues with the QA server right now, though, is our backend API that controls all the zone launching and the zone shutting down and all that kind of stuff. It basically ties into the account system, and it's basically our backend GM control software, right? It was designed with the intent of it running on the same machine, essentially, as all the zone servers, so it can control dev, QA, and live, three different independent development environments, or three different independent environments for the game. It can control those separately, but it was never intended to operate on different machines, right? Mm-hmm. So our backend guy, Richard, he is working on splitting that out. So basically the main service will run in one spot and then communicate remotely with different servers, like physical machines, to run different environments. So that is, I think he's, maybe 80 to 90% done with that, or it's moving into the testing phase now. So once that is good to go, then we'll have a centralized environment to control QA zones going up and down, because right now I've been just doing that manually, which is it's not an ideal scenario, obviously, but once that's up and going, then we can actually start pushing content to QA on a daily basis, right? So we can make a change, merge it to QA, push it out, build some patches and say, hey guys, this is what we threw in, test it, let us know what you think, right? So the whole idea is going to be take your characters from live, copy them to QA, and maybe we do that on a weekly basis. We'll figure that out as we go, and then push out content to live, such as these defense changes, for example, and then say, hey, log in and spend an hour testing these changes. Let us know what you think, so we can make adjustments before they actually get pushed to live. So hopefully that will take us back to the days of the beta environment where we could push things more frequently and test wild ideas, or things that we're not so sure whether it's going to break the game or not, and get some feedback from the players more easily than pushing it to live and having everybody go, oh, it's broken.
Yes, absolutely. And so the idea will be also to have autos patch implemented first on the QA server, so the player are trying it, and then we will have a big massive patch, well, massive patch maybe not, but a big patch once a month, something like that.
Yeah, so how we're doing it right now is we're pushing content to QA internally, and then the internal dev team meets a few times a week to actually test that content locally. But as the players have aptly pointed out to us, we are not always the best at testing everything. There's only a handful of us that get into a group and go around and actually test this content. So there's a lot of things we can miss. We're all human, and there's a lot of things we don't think of in the moment. So the best people to test this content is going to be the players that are in there every day and very familiar with their characters, right? So being able to have that in a environment where it's okay for things to break is very important, because we know you guys are attached to your characters, and we don't want to mess that up. We don't want to, break your character, have you lose equipment, or anything weird, crazy happen with your live character, because that's very important that you maintain stability with those characters. But in QA, we want to break stuff, right? We want to make changes. We want to swing for the fences and see what works and what doesn't work, and make adjustments along the way, because that's the development style that we like doing. We just haven't had the opportunity to do that because we're running a live service now. So
yeah, it's true that for you like to tinker. That gives you a lot of inspiration and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean, we have wild ideas all the time, right? Like, we're like, oh, what if we do this? And like, we can try it, but then it's a multi-week process of testing it, and it's hard to do and hard to balance when there's so many things changing at one time, right? And given that we're a distributed team where people are working, all over the world, there's a lot of asynchronous communication that happens. So sometimes those ideas that you get rolling, just either fizzle out or don't, accumulate into anything because of that asynchronous communication. So you have design meetings, and sometimes those come out with something, sometimes they don't. But without being able to push these things and actually test it with a larger environment and say, how do the players react to this? We're just guessing at that point. We're making assumptions about how the players will react, and that's not always accurate.
Yes, indeed. So the QA server, when can players expect to be able to try stuff?
I'm not entirely sure, but the QA server is completely independent of live. So the actual, like, putting it up and bringing it down and all that kind of stuff it's not like we have to wait for a patch day or anything like that. So, as soon as the back-end stuff gets into the point to where we can turn the zones on and off without having to manually do it, then we should be able to, okay, let's build a QA patch for players and push that out. There's some things we still have to refine, like, we likely want to make available to players things like leveling potions or, chests with special equipment. So, not only could you get in and play your live character if you'd like, to test that, but also maybe start a new character, try a different class, try a different role, and get up to speed, right? So be like, I want to, hey, we need to test this new level 35 dungeon. If you don't have a level 35 character, then you're not going to be able to contribute, to that. So one of the things we have in the GM zone, for example, is we have a bunch of belts that have all the stats. It's one piece of equipment that has all the stats that is the average, stat budget for a level 30, right? So you grab that level 30 belt, you put that belt on, and now you are equivalent to a level 30 with, decent gear. And you don't have to put any other equipment on, right? So you grab the belt, you grab some weapons, and you go out and you can now fight as if you were a level 30 without having to worry about gathering, do I have the right chest piece, this or that, right? So those type of things being made available along with leveling potions and stuff like that, so people can kind of cheat on QA and have, test out the content that we're targeting at that point. Figuring out how to distribute that stuff is something else we need to do, because like I said, we can break things on QA and it's not going to hurt the game because it's QA.
Yes, of course. So that's really great. So just a confirmation that any players with an active subscription can participate to the QA server?
Yeah, that's the idea. So in your launcher, you'll notice you can drop that menu down and switch from live to QA, which will likely download a super old patch, or it won't download anything at all because we haven't deployed anything to QA for you guys in quite some time. But the functionality is all there, so it'll be set up as soon as we're ready to go. We just deploy a patch and say, hey, switch the thing in your launcher, hit update, and you'll get the new patch, and then we'll go.
All right, perfect. Before to answer the question of the player, I see there's plenty of comment, and I'm going to check that out. But what's the plan for the future? What you're excited about for the future?
Oh boy, I mean, there's a number of things. I'm excited for many of the new zones coming up. I know we have 3 overland zones that are mostly finished through their art passes. They'll have couple more minor art passes going through. My personal favorite is the Grizzled Peaks, because I actually designed that terrain many years ago. So I'm excited to see a chunk of my terrain design, which is, it's not a lot of design, it's just randomly generating things and liking the results. So getting that into the game, and in that I just really like mountainous regions like that in games with a little bit of snow peak mountains and things. So I'm excited to see that in the game. We've got some other cool, really overworld zones. The massive dungeon that I teased a long while back has been split into 3 phases. So we're just starting to refine the first phase. So it's a complete departure from the current like vein system of those caverns and things like that. It's a lot different. It does have caves and caverns in it, but you'll see, it's madness. Let's just say I get lost flying around with the editor camera in this dungeon, and I can see the whole thing, and I still get lost. It's like a giant pretzel of madness, but I love it. So getting those zones out, obviously. Adric and I have had some recent discussions about the Ember Essence reagent type upgrade system, and we've made some real progress on that front in what we think is going to be the most interesting. And it's even more interesting than what we had initially planned, I think. It's just a matter of we're still churning through some of the design elements to see if they still work, right? So a lot of the times we're like, ooh, what about this idea? This idea sounds really great on paper. Does it actually work implementation wise, right? Like we said, okay, let's this should correlate to this, etc., etc. Does that actually work in the game right now? Like if we did that for all the abilities or this or that, does that actually work? So we're still processing through that, and once we get to the point to where we can say yes or no, then we'll start doing the implementation phase of that, and making that better for everybody.
Oh,
and
that's
I'm
really cool.
super excited to get that out if these design thoughts come through. And obviously while doing that design, we're continually iterating on that, and trying to make sure the best ideas get put forward and utilized.
So that will be the alchemy system. A lot of people will be happy about that.
Yeah. We know that's been on the table for a while, and it's one of those things where the previous idea for that system, after we added reagents and all this kind of stuff, like the previous idea for that system kind of, I don't think a lot of people were excited about it internally. At least I know I wasn't. So it kind of tampered my mood to actually work on some of the design elements for that. But this new idea that we've had that kind of shifted things a bit has got us quite excited for the opportunities. And I think it'll be a nice way to allow players to kind of diversify their roles a little bit more and things like that. So. But I don't want to get too far down that road without knowing that it's actually going to work. So
yes, of course. So it's just a tease for now. All right. So I'm going to check out the question. Let's see what we have. Creator Zero is asking, will there be a possibility for future position like moderator, mentor, giving the community and active member more abilities to proactively help you in the staff as well as the community?
Yeah, we've had that come up a couple of times. The trouble is how do we make those tools available to the player without, because we have a whole suite of GM tools, right? So we can teleport around, we can summon people, we can summon creatures, we can do all sorts of stuff. We can get rid of your we can give you your bag back. There's a number of things we can do. What we need to do is select a small subset of those things and see how we can implement those in the regular client and give them permissions server wise, right? Like the servers need to check those positions, because if we put them in the client, then technically it's available for everyone. So not available for everyone, but it is the code is existing for everyone, which means that there's opportunity for people to take advantage of those things if they're not doing things.
Yeah.
Don't know what word I should be using there, but if they have malicious intents, there we go. Then they can take advantage of those things, and we need to make sure we have proper protections in place so those don't happen. Most everything that happens, at least from the GM side, even in the GM client, is server validated. So the server validates whether that person is a GM or not. So I'm not a huge, I don't think there'd be a huge problem. The question comes down to like, what would be the most useful for the community for that person to have that couldn't really be exploited for gameplay purposes, and what kind of form would those things happen. So it's something we've talked about. It's just kind of lower on the priority list at the moment because we're all, spread way too thin at this point.
Yep. So Safe Place is asking, quick note, patch note state pursuit added a large thread component, but I see nothing in the tooltip and pursuit still generate one thread as it did before.
Yeah, I'd have to check on that. I'm not the perfect guy to ask about those specific changes. Adric is typically in charge of those, so it is entirely possible that one of the tooltips is messed up and is not showing the proper information. There is also one thing that has an additional threat, like there's a component on abilities of additional threat that doesn't properly get conveyed through the combat text. So yeah, that's something on the short list of things to look into. But I can bug Adric about that to see if that's actually the case. So I'm unfortunately don't have a good answer for you.
Okie dokie. So Stinkhorn is saying, just seems like common sense to release new content before the free weekend, have world chat buzzing with the new stuff. Now you have bitter people who have been sitting in one little zone for months being toxic. Well, I will answer that we do what we can. We are not going to drop a zone just to create some buzz.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because things take much longer than you would think, right? The design of a zone and the implementation and deployment of a new zone has multiple levels. Some of that is the art pass, some of that is the tech pass, right? We've got to set up Ember rings and zone points, and and all that stuff's not too big of a deal. But what takes the largest amount of time is probably content design. Laying down spawn points and things like that probably doesn't take too long. You can probably get a lot of that done in a day. But one has to go through and make, you can't just put a zone out there with nothing in it, right? Because that's also just as disappointing as not having a zone at all. So you have to design unique items, unique rares, unique uncommons, unique drops, unique spawns. You have to plan out, okay, where the resource node is going to be, who drops what do the loot tables look like. So it's a much longer process than any of us would like, right? Like we would love to just be like, boom, here's 3 new overland zones in a dungeon, go. But at the same time, unfortunately our team is spread thin, so we're also working on, hey, how can we improve current players' lives, right? So we've got a handful of people that are at the peak level, right? And they're pushing the boundaries of, where you can get in our game right now. And we have another large chunk of people in the middle part of the game, right? So how can we make everyone's lives better with our time, right? Like how do we because us putting in a new level 50 zone is only going to benefit a handful of people, whereas us improving active defenses and working on threat design and Ember Essence design is going to benefit everyone in the game. So we're trying to work through all of it, right? Let's just put it that way. We're all spinning plates and doing the best we can to get everything out. And I know that's not a great excuse, but it's the reality of the situation.
And it's also the fact that we are not yet in a position where we can really hold on content because we know we will have a special event. And so, this zone is ready, but we are so only going to release it in 4 weeks from now because we have decided to do an open weekend or something like this.
Well, it's not only that, but there's a decent delay between implementation and release. We talked about this in a couple patch notes talking about the quests, right? So quests, the writer team hands off the quest to the tech team. The tech team has to implement that in the game, which takes a few days. And then once it's in the game, we have to do a QA build, and then the writers have to get in there and test it, say, does this quest work first off, and then what kind of edits do we want to make? And then if there's iterations on that, they have to go in, and all these have to be done by a specific time to build the live builds and make sure things are fully tested. Because one thing we've learned since going live is that delivering content that is a hollow shell is not fun for players. Delivering content that is broken to players is not fun. Not testing things, thoroughly is also not fun because it just seems like we're slapping stuff together, which we don't want to seem like we're doing, and we're not doing. So, we have had to slow down our development a bit. Not slow down our development, but slow down our pushing content to live because we want to make sure things are tested properly for you guys. And a lot of the reason we're pushing to get this QA server up is because we can, ease back we can push on the throttle a bit on QA, right? We can start dumping things into QA and be like, here's what we're working on. It's rough. It doesn't have rares yet, but what do you think of the layout? What do you think of, the flow of the zone, and what do you think of the spawn rates, right? So we can do all those type of things on QA, which we can't do on live, right? We can only test so much on live, without, causing issues. So that's a lot of the push for us to get QA is so we can push out content much faster and say, look, here's a bunch of stuff. It's not finished yet. We're hoping to have it finished by the end of the month. Get into QA, test it, let us know so we have time to refine that stuff and we can make it better for you guys. So when it does hit live, it's a much more enjoyable experience for everyone.
Speaking of which, I do have a question. What do you think, because we have this open weekend, about our first player experience? We have been polishing that a lot during those months after launch. So what do you think? What can you say about that?
I think there's a lot of work to be done. If I'm being completely honest here, I think we did a decent job of helping players get into the game and holding their hand, but not holding their hand. I think the idea is kind of to hold their hand at first for the first, handful of levels, pun intended, and then basically release them into the wild once they pass that first valley, right? And then they're kind of on their own to kind of discover and say, okay, because you can't just drop players into the game and expect them to know what's going on, right? You've kind of got to give them an introduction, or at least a soft introduction to how the systems work, right? How does combat work? What does this mean? What is sitting versus standing versus having your weapons out, putting your weapons away? What do those mechanics do? Why are they in existence? And what benefits do I get versus this or that? How do the quests work? Do I get experience from quests? Do I get money from quests? Do I get rewards from quests? Why would I want to do quest? Oh, crafting. Why do I want to do crafting, etc.? Oh, what are these ember ring things? So what are these big, weird, hollow things that make my vision turn, gray? Just an introduction and hold people's hands a little bit just to get them going is, the ideal scenario, and then kind of taper that off as the game goes on. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. One of the things that's on my short list of things that I'd like to see improved is essentially all those little tutorial things that would pop up when you first start the game is have somewhere to read those, right? Because players either sometimes miss them or they didn't read them the first time, which is fine. But having a place for them to go back and review them would probably help because, maybe they're sitting at an ember ring, they open their log and they're like, let's reread this thing about ember rings and see how these work, or let me reread about combat stance. So having some of that information revisitable, I think, would help that a bit as well. So
player manual in game.
Not necessarily a player manual, but those little tutorial tidbits that would pop up as you first started the game, just putting that out somewhere in your quest log so you could review them again, right? So you could just read them and say, okay. Or maybe I need to refresh my memory on what the difference between having my weapons out or my weapons in is, right?
Okay, perfect. Let's see if there's another question. Someone is asking, do you fear people just playing Q&A and not live if you leave it always on and can get the best loot and fight anything in the game without having to grind at all?
Right. So that's a fantastic question, and that's definitely something we've thought about because if QA is on all the time and you can just go play on a QA and you have no fear of death and you can get all the gear and you can do whatever you want, what's the difference, right? Well, the persistence on QA is going to be not the same as live, right? So we'll probably restore your live characters frequently and copy them over. So any progress you make on QA will likely be wiped frequently. We probably won't be testing quests on QA. Tests or quests will probably be limited to dev and the internal quest team, making sure that the that the quest works and that the writing is where they want. Because the last thing we want is people going into QA finding out how to do the quest and then hopping in live and just going bing 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 bing. Like that's not fun. There are situations where we may want to test things regarding questing on QA, but it's unlikely at this point. I think we have a decent testing regimen for the internal dev team for quests, so that'll be a big thing. Not all zones will be up all the time, so if we're focused on, say, okay, we want to test this new Red Shore dungeon, right? Maybe we'll bring up Red Shore dungeon, and manually move everybody's character to Red Shore, right? Boom. Okay, you can go test that and hang out in Red Shore, but outside of that, maybe you can't do anything. So the testing environment also won't be up all the time. I don't know what that cadence will look like, but it's really going to depend on the content. So it's not going to be something we just put up and let you test forever. Hopefully we can get back into some kind of regimen where we join you guys like it used to be in the old days back in beta, when we'd all get together on a Wednesday night and test for an hour or two. I think that'd be a really great opportunity for something like that to spend some more time with the devs, and who knows, maybe we can commingle that with the community meetings, right? So somehow tag off of that. I don't know. There's a lot of opportunities for us to engage more with you all and have a increased frequency in our dialogue and how we view the game and how we see things progressing, and hopefully get more feedback from you guys, and you guys can get a better perspective of where we're coming from with our design process as well.
Well, that's perfect. See if there's one last question. Yes, Madnatas is asking. Hello, Madnatas. Question: Any plan on making the question. Any plan on making inventory bag a little bit bigger? For example, as a reward from a quest, half of my inventory is gear with plus heal stat for support. So what about the inventory management? A lot of people ask that.
Yeah, inventory is tricky. It's really tricky because, my personal view on it is I can give you more inventory. But the question to me becomes, how long before that additional inventory is not enough as well, right? So, and I know this is a weird kind of tricky question, but I view it as kind of a temporary solution, because I could give you extra inventory, and then maybe 6 months from now you're used to that inventory and you're then asking for more inventory, right? And this is a natural thing, and I completely understand where players are coming from this. So it's tricky because there's no right answer to this. Many people would be like infinite inventory, but we also don't have a weight system. There's not currently any hard stacking limits on items and things like that. So it's tricky because having a limited inventory is kind of part of that game pressure of like, oh, I got this item. Do I want to keep this stack of stuff that I'm just selling to a merchant, or do I want to get this better item? There's a little bit of a trade-off there, where I think we can come to a middle ground or have a better, dialogue is potentially bank space, right? Because bank space is kind of like something stored somewhere and you're not carrying it around, so there's not a lot of that decision space happening there. I am looking into increasing the regular stash size. What that looks like, I'm not sure yet, whether that's adding more rows, shifting the cost down, or adding more slots to each individual row. I haven't really come to a conclusion on what I want to do there or not, but I'm definitely willing to concede and give you guys more space in some fashion. I'm just very cautious because once I give you space, I cannot remove said space because you just can't. So I don't view it as a permanent solution, right? Because if I give you more inventory space, that's fine. You're going to be happy. You're going to be happy for a few months, maybe. You're going to be happy for, who knows, maybe forever. But I'm willing to bet there's a chunk of people that either come into the game and they don't know that they had less inventory space in the past, and they're not happy with the current space limits, so they want more. Or there's people that eventually fill it up and they get used to that space and they also want more. So I'm very cautious about adding more inventory space in the bag for that's one of the primary reasons for that.
Well, I think it was a very nice last question. Thank you so much, Undone, for joining us today and answering questions and speaking about the development of the game. This was really insightful, I think. It was cool.
Yeah. Pleasure coming on. It was a little stressful, hoping that nothing went wrong with the patch, but everything seems to be good. So yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. See you soon, I hope, for another episode sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Just let me know, and I'll be there.
Awesome. So see you soon. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.
And that's it for today. Thank you so very much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any question, any comments, feel free to leave them in the comments below. That's why they are used for. Check out all of the links that I will provide you in the information box towards the different subjects I've been talking to, especially the shout out for the community member, the content creator of the week. I hope to see you next week live on Twitch TV. Every community show are hosted during the maintenance at 6 p.m. Central Europe time or 11 a.m. Central American time. And then they are published, edited on YouTube. You take care of yourself, have a great week, and I will see you soon. Bye.